Heads like you do not cash checks this big. The words tore through the marble lobby of Unity Trust Bank like a blade through silk. A white manager in a tailored suit held a 5-figure check between his fingers, the edges already curling in flame. Across from him, a black man in a white hoodie stood motionless, a security guard's hand pressed against his arm. The fire licked higher, and gasps rippled through the room as phones came out, recording every second. The insult was not just loud. It was deliberate, rehearsed, and meant to erase him. He did not flinch. His eyes stayed locked on the man burning his property, the way a mountain does not shift for thunder. This was not the first time he had been told to step aside, not the first time his worth was questioned by someone hiding behind a desk. The smell of paper smoke mixed with the sterile scent of air conditioning, filling the lobby like evidence of hate you could breathe in. The manager sneered louder, raising the flame higher. "This is fraud. You people always try to play rich. Not in my bank." His voice cracked but carried, bouncing off glass walls so every customer could hear. 2 women by the line covered their mouths. A young man whispered, "That is insane." He showed ID. Another began filming, his red light blinking like a witness. Still, the man in the hoodie said nothing. Silence pressed against the room harder than any shout could. His calm looked like defiance, and that was what shook them. He simply placed both hands on the counter, steady as stone, and repeated once, cool and measured, "Run the numbers." Ho! The command landed like ice, but the manager laughed, mocking. "We do not run scams. We expose them." Then, with one cruel flick, he held the burning check closer, as if erasing a name could erase a man. The guard at his side tightened his grip, muttering, "Time to leave." But the man did not move. He did not raise his voice. He stood anchored to the floor itself, letting the flame say more about the institution than it ever could about him. Phones clicked. Murmurs grew, and in the middle of a banking hall meant for trust, the very word was collapsing into ash. The lobby did not breathe. Smoke curled up from the burning check, leaving a dark scar in the air above the mahogany counter. The bank manager smirked as if destroying paper could erase proof of a life's work. His suit looked polished, his voice sharpened with years of authority misused. "Fraudsters," he said, pointing at the man in the white hoodie, "always come dressed down. They think if they look harmless, they will get away with it." A ripple of murmurs spread across the waiting line. A young Latino man whispered to his wife, "He showed them ID. I saw it." She pressed her lips together, clutching her child's hand tighter. Another customer, an older woman with a pearl brooch, raised her phone a little higher, recording with a frown. The security guard's hand pressed harder into the black man's arm. "We are done here," he muttered, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. The man did not resist. His shoulders stayed square, his breath steady. Calm was his armor, and silence was his strategy. The manager fed the flames until the paper shriveled to black ash. "Pawn shops exist for a reason," he jeered. "Take your pretend fortune there. This is a bank for real clients." His words echoed like a gavel striking down dignity. Then came the first witness. A young woman near the line could not hold back. "This is wrong," she said loudly, voice trembling but clear. "I saw him hand over identification. I saw the account number. You are burning his money because of how he looks." The manager's face hardened. He turned on her, spitting venom. "Mind your business, little girl, or I will have security escort you too." His threat filled the lobby with ice. But phones kept rising. Red lights blinked like hundreds of small, unblinking eyes. The black man finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and tapped the screen of his phone. "Document everything," he said calmly. Not to the crowd, not to the guard, but to someone on the other end. His voice carried enough weight to silence the whispers. A clear female voice answered through the speaker. "Protocol engaged. Every word is being logged. Continue at your discretion." The manager froze for a second, but pride shoved fear aside. "Play acting," he scoffed. "Technology does not make lies true." He leaned closer, invading space, daring him to react. "People like you never belong in places like this. I decide who is credible here." That was when another witness broke. A man in a gray business suit, standing near the deposit line, stepped forward. "You tore up a legitimate check without even running verification," he said, his voice firm. "I am a client here, and I want to know why you think bias is policy." The room grew louder, Not with chaos, but with clarity. Strangers were finding their voices, one after another. The bank lobby, once a chamber of silence and marble, was shifting into a courtroom of witnesses. The man in the hoodie remained centered, unmoved. His eyes lifted from the ashes to the crowd, then back to the manager who still held the lighter. No shouting, no sudden gestures, just a single sentence, steady as stone. "You are not destroying me. You are exposing yourself." The weight of those words hung heavier than smoke. The lobby now knew. Something larger was unfolding, and the manager was no longer in control. The silence cracked when the assistant manager rushed in from the side hallway, his tie loose, his face pale. "What is going on here?" he demanded, but his voice wavered when he saw the smoldering fragments of paper on the counter. The check was gone, reduced to ash in full view of customers who now stood as witnesses. The young woman still held her phone up high, shaking but steady. The gray-suited client folded his arms, his presence like a second gavel hitting the marble floor. The bank manager jabbed a finger toward the black man in the hoodie. "Remove him. Now. He is a con artist and a threat to this institution." His words shot across the lobby with forced authority, but the echo carried desperation. The security guard shifted his stance, still gripping the man's arm, but doubt had already entered his eyes. The assistant manager hesitated. His gaze moved from the burning lighter in the manager's hand to the circle of phones raised around the room. He swallowed hard. "Sir, perhaps we should verify his documents first." "Do not be naive," the manager snapped. "This is how fraud works. They dress casual, wave around fake checks, and expect pity." He turned back to the man in the hoodie, sneering. "You think calm eyes and quiet words make you credible? Not here, not today." For the first time, the man spoke with force. "Credibility is not decided by prejudice. Run the account, and you will see the truth." His voice was low, but it rolled through the lobby like thunder beneath the floor. The gray-suited client stepped closer. "He is right. I demand transparency. I invest with this bank, and I will not stand by while bias overrides policy." Murmurs of agreement rose behind him. A mother with her teenage son nodded firmly. An older man in a navy jacket whispered, "This is disgraceful." The manager's face flushed red. He slammed the lighter shut and tossed it aside. "Enough. Security, escort him out before this circus continues." The guard's grip tightened again, but hesitation showed in his jaw. The man in the hoodie did not resist. He simply tapped his phone once more. "Phase 2, he said calmly. The female voice returned instantly, clear through the speaker. "Escalation logged. Every bias statement has been transcribed. Internal review board notified. Continue as planned." A gasp swept the lobby. The manager's bravado faltered. "Who exactly are you calling? What board? What nonsense are you pulling?" His words carried less certainty now, like a wall showing cracks. The assistant manager looked around nervously. "Sir, customers are recording. If this reaches the compliance department—" "Silence!" the manager roared, but the sound rang hollow. The man in the hoodie lifted his head slowly, meeting the manager's glare with a calm that felt unshakable. "Silence is what you fear most, because silence means I do not need to shout to prove what already belongs to me." The crowd stirred. The young woman filming whispered, "He is not bluffing." The gray-suited client nodded gravely. The weight in the room was no longer the manager's to carry. And for the first time, even the security guard eased his grip, his hand slipping away as though he realized he was holding on to the wrong side of history. The air in the lobby thickened like smoke that refused to clear. Every second stretched, every heartbeat echoed louder against the marble. The bank manager's face flushed deeper as he realized control was slipping away, yet pride forced him to double down. He leaned across the counter, his voice rising with venom. "You are a con artist, and I will not let this bank fall victim to your lies. Security, remove him now." The guard stepped forward again, heavy hand reaching toward the black man's shoulder, but hesitation lingered in his eyes, the kind of hesitation born from doubt, from knowing too many phones were pointed at him, from sensing that the truth was already spilling into the open. The man in the hoodie did not flinch. He allowed the silence to sit heavy before speaking with quiet precision. "Every insult you have spoken is being logged. Every refusal to verify, every biased word. You are not removing me. You are removing your own mask." The female voice returned from his phone, calm and efficient. "Compliance board notified. Recording is active. 14 biased statements documented in the last 8 minutes. System cross-check underway. Gasps rippled across the room. Customers exchanged glances, realizing that what they were witnessing was no ordinary dispute. This was being tracked, cataloged, and elevated to a level far beyond the walls of the lobby. The assistant manager shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between the burning fragments of the check still smoldering on the counter and the calm man who refused to be moved. His lips parted, but he spoke so low only those closest could hear. "Sir, what if he is telling the truth?" The manager whipped around, fury in his glare. "Do not question me. I run this branch. I decide who belongs here." He turned back to the man in the hoodie, spitting each word like a curse. "And you do not belong." The room stiffened. The insult was no longer coded, no longer hidden behind policy. It was bare, raw, and unmistakable. A woman near the line raised her phone higher, her voice trembling with outrage. "He belongs here more than you if this is how you treat clients." The man in the hoodie finally stepped forward, his presence filling the space even without raising his voice. His eyes locked on the manager, steady and unshaken. "You think you have stripped me of dignity by burning that check. But what you burned was your own credibility, and you will answer for it." The crowd murmured louder. The father who had spoken to his daughter earlier leaned toward another customer. "He is not just some client, he knows something. He is standing too calm for this to be chance." The manager's jaw tightened. Desperation leaked through his arrogance. He barked at the security guard once more. "Remove him now or you will be replaced." But the guard, hands hovering uncertainly, finally spoke. "Sir, with respect, he has not raised his voice once. He has shown identification. And the customers, they are all watching." The manager's fury shook his frame. "Then you are all blind. He is nothing but a fraud in a hoodie." His shout cracked across the lobby, but it no longer commanded obedience. The man in the hoodie let the silence fall heavy again before answering, voice low and resonant. "You called me nothing, yet every witness here will remember today as the moment you revealed yourself as less than nothing, a man stripped of truth." The weight of those words settled on every face in the room. The balance of power had shifted, and even without revealing who he truly was, the man no longer looked like a client under suspicion. He looked like the storm no one had expected. The tension in the lobby climbed with every breath. What had begun as a single act of arrogance was now unraveling into a spectacle of humiliation. The bank manager's hands trembled as he gripped the counter, but he forced his voice into a shout. "I said this man is a fraud. If you cannot see it, you are fools." His words did not land with power. They landed with the brittle crack of pride breaking under pressure. Across the room, the young teller who had dared to speak earlier found her voice again. "I saw the account number. I checked the name. He was legitimate." She stepped out from behind her station, her voice firmer now. "You burned his check because of how he looks." Gasps rippled through the lobby. The older woman with the pearl brooch shook her head in disbelief. "I have banked here for 20 years, she said, her voice loud enough to carry. "And I have never seen behavior this shameful." The manager spun toward her, desperate to reclaim control. "Madam, you are being manipulated. This man staged this entire performance. He is here to create chaos." But the words no longer stuck. Customers shifted, their silence breaking into open judgment. A young man holding a stroller called out, "The only chaos is you screaming at a client who stayed calm." Another customer muttered, "He showed identification. You refused to look." The black man remained still, but his eyes moved across the room, acknowledging each witness who found the courage to speak. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the gravity of a verdict. "Thank you. Truth is not loud, but it is relentless. It spreads." The assistant manager stepped forward, torn between loyalty and conscience. His voice cracked as he said, "Maybe we should stop," and the bank manager cut him off, his face red with fury. "Do not betray me in front of these people. You work for me." The man in the hoodie turned his gaze directly on the assistant manager. "He is wrong. You do not work for a man who abuses power. You work for an institution that is supposed to stand for trust." The words landed like a stone dropped in still water. The assistant manager froze, caught in the collision between truth and fear. Around him, murmurs grew into open disapproval. Someone near the back called out, "Run the account! Prove it!" The manager's mask cracked further. "Enough!" he roared, slamming his hand against the counter again. "I will not waste this bank's time validating a thief." The black man raised his phone once more. His voice was steady, deliberate. Escalate further. Note that he called me a thief without evidence. The female voice answered instantly, crisp and precise. Logged, recorded, escalation submitted to corporate ethics review. The crowd reacted audibly this time. A young woman whispered, corporate ethics, that means this is going higher than him. The man in the hoodie lowered the phone slowly, his calm presence now commanding the entire lobby. You called me a thief in a building designed to hold trust. You burned evidence in a place meant to protect it. The irony is not lost on anyone here. The manager tried to sneer, but his voice cracked. You think a few words and a phone call will save you? You are bluffing. The black man's reply came sharp, cutting through the charged air. No, I am simply patient. The truth takes time, but it always arrives. The lobby held its breath. Phones continued recording, and in that silence, it became clear. The man in the hoodie was no longer the one on trial. The bank itself was. The sound of whispers filled the bank like wind moving through a canyon. Every corner of the marble lobby carried voices, some shocked, some outraged, all circling around the same truth. The manager, red-faced and trembling, was no longer in command of the room. He clenched his fists on the counter, trying to summon authority that had already slipped through his hands. You are wasting everyone's time, he shouted. This man is a fraud, and I will not allow him to stand here pretending otherwise. Security, I want him thrown out now. The guard shifted uneasily, his eyes flicking from the phones to the man in the hoodie who still stood unmoved. Sir, with all respect, maybe we should double-check. The words hit the manager like a slap. Double-check? Are you questioning me too? This is exactly how scams take root. Doubt, hesitation, weakness. That is what they prey on. Before he could continue, a voice rose from the back of the line. It was the gray-suited client, the one who had spoken earlier. He took a step forward, his tone clear and firm. No, sir, what we are seeing here is not a scam. It is prejudice. I know what I witnessed. He handed you proper identification. He handed you a valid check. You destroyed it without a single verification. The lobby stirred louder. A young mother whispered, He is right. I saw it too. Her teenage son added, I cannot believe this is happening in a bank. The manager's face twisted with anger. Silence, all of you. This is my branch, and I will not be undermined by clients or staff. That was when the young teller stepped forward again, her hands shaking but her voice steadier than before. You told me last week that certain clients did not fit our image. I kept quiet then, but I cannot now. You are crossing a line in front of everyone. The room gasped. The manager turned on her, his tone venomous. You are finished. Do you hear me? One more word and your career ends today. The black man in the hoodie lifted his phone once more, his calm voice carrying across the crowd. Log that threat. Note that he is punishing staff for telling the truth. The female voice responded promptly through the speaker. Logged. Verbal intimidation recorded. Internal report updated. The weight of those words settled like a gavel strike. The lobby was no longer just watching. It was transforming into a chamber of testimony. Every customer, every staff member who dared to speak was now part of a record that could not be erased. The assistant manager's shoulders sagged. He rubbed his temple as though he had carried this burden for too long. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with guilt. This is not right. I have seen him do this before. Different faces, different clients, but the same treatment. The manager spun, shocked betrayal flashing across his face. You will regret this. Do you understand? You are destroying your career. The assistant manager's voice cracked, but he stood his ground. No, you destroyed it yourself when you let bias become policy. The crowd erupted into murmurs of agreement, some voices rising with courage, others whispering but all aligned. Phones tilted higher, capturing every word. The man in the hoodie did not smile, but the shift in his eyes said enough. He was not fighting for validation anymore. The room itself was beginning to validate him. The balance had tipped, and though the manager tried to cling to authority, it was slipping away like sand through a clenched fist. The moment snapped like a wire pulled too tight. The bank manager's rage boiled over into action. With a trembling hand, he grabbed what remained of the check stub from the counter, lifted it high as if it were a trophy, and then set it aflame with his lighter. The paper curled, blackened, and dropped in fragments to the marble floor. There, he barked through gritted teeth. Now there is no evidence, no proof. You are nothing but a liar in a hoodie." His voice cracked, but he forced it louder, as though volume could make his words true. The lobby erupted with gasps. Phones caught every second, the flames reflected in their glass screens. An older man shook his head in disbelief. "That is destruction of property," he whispered to the woman beside him. She answered with equal disbelief. "And in front of all of us." The security guard stepped back, his hand hovering but no longer daring to touch the calm figure standing before him. It was as though he realized one more move might ruin him too. The black man's voice broke through the tension, low and unwavering. "You think fire erases truth, but what you burned was not my credibility. You burned your own." The female voice on his phone responded instantly, sharp and undeniable. "Destruction of financial instrument confirmed. Escalation recorded. Internal review notified." The crowd stirred louder. The young teller, who had already spoken out earlier, raised her chin, her voice steadier than before. "He is right. You destroyed it because you did not want the truth checked. That is not procedure, that is hate." The manager turned on her, his face twisted with fury. "You are finished here. Do you hear me? Your career ends today." But his threat no longer carried weight. Customers shouted back now. A man with a stroller called out, "You cannot fire her for telling the truth." Another woman near the door added, "We all saw you. You cannot erase witnesses." Ugh. The black man stepped closer to the counter, his presence commanding without effort. He let the silence stretch before speaking, each word deliberate. "You called me a fraud. You called me a thief. You burned my check. And yet, I am still standing. Do you know why?" The lobby went still, all eyes fixed on him. His words cut through the charged air like a verdict. Because dignity does not burn, and truth does not tear. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Murmurs of agreement rippled across the marble hall. Phones tilted higher. The balance had shifted, and everyone present knew that the man who had been mocked moments before now stood as the only unshaken authority in the room. The lobby felt like a storm contained within 4 marble walls. Every face turned, every phone raised, as if the entire crowd understood they were no longer simply customers. They were witnesses to a reckoning. The manager, desperate and sweating, slammed both hands on the counter. "Do not listen to him. This is theater. He is manipulating all of you with cheap tricks and rehearsed lines." His words wavered with panic more than command. The security guard did not move. His arms remained at his sides, his stance heavy with hesitation. Finally, he spoke, his voice firm but reluctant. "Sir, I cannot remove him. Not after what I just saw. Not after what everyone here just saw." "Oh." The refusal hit the room like a bell. Customers gasped, some even clapping softly. A young man near the window whispered, "That guard just said no." The man in the hoodie lifted his phone again. His tone was calm, exact, impossible to ignore. "Escalate to internal protocol. Confirm incident classification." The female voice came through the speaker, crisp and final. "Classification confirmed. Branch manager misconduct. Level 3 escalation. Compliance board notified." The manager's bravado faltered. He whipped his head toward the assistant manager, eyes wide. "Shut this down! Do something!" The assistant manager shook his head slowly, voice breaking but resolute. "No, sir. I cannot defend this. Not anymore. You have crossed too many lines." The manager's face twisted. "Traitor! You are all traitors." He turned to the teller who had spoken earlier. "And you are finished. Do you hear me? Finished." But the teller did not flinch. Her voice carried across the lobby. "You cannot fire me for telling the truth, and the truth is that he belongs here." The man in the hoodie stepped forward. His presence seemed to steady the air itself. His words were quiet but carried like a verdict. "You said I had nothing, but what I have cannot be burned. It cannot be torn. I have witnesses, I have records, and I have the very system of this institution documenting your downfall in real time." And the crowd erupted, voices rising in outrage and support. A woman shouted, "He owns something here, I can feel it." Another customer added, "That manager is finished." The manager tried one last stand, slamming his fist on the counter. "This is still my branch. I decide who belongs here." The man in the hoodie did not blink. He answered with a single line, calm and devastating. "You mistook prejudice for power. That is your last mistake." The words settled like a gavel strike, undeniable and final. The entire room felt the shift. The manager's reign of arrogance was over, and the truth was beginning to take its place. Gasps spread like a ripple through the marble lobby, bouncing from wall to wall. The words from the phone still echoed in the air: branch manager misconduct. Compliance board notified. It was no longer just a scene. It was evidence, sealed in real time. The manager's face turned pale, his hands clenching the counter as if gripping the last edge of authority. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. Then louder, trembling with desperation, "This is a scam, some kind of technology trick. He hacked the system." The black man stepped forward, unhurried, his calm presence commanding the silence. His voice rolled low and steady. "You called me a fraud. You burned my check. You tore my dignity in front of witnesses. And you did it in the very bank I own." The words hit the lobby like thunder. Customers gasped. A woman near the rope line dropped her purse. The young teller pressed both hands against her desk, whispering, "He owns the bank." The gray-suited client, who had been recording since the beginning, spoke with conviction. "I knew it. No ordinary customer would be this calm. This man is not bluffing." The manager stumbled back a step, sweat on his forehead, his voice breaking. "No, someone like you could never." The man in the hoodie cut him off sharply. "Finish that sentence. Say what you mean. Say the prejudice out loud." The manager's mouth opened, but no words came. The silence that followed was louder than any confession. The female voice from the phone spoke again, clear as glass. "Identity confirmed. Majority shareholder and executive authority verified. Owner profile active." The lobby froze. Customers looked at one another in disbelief. An older woman whispered, "He is the owner." A younger man added, "The very bank this manager thought he ran." The security guard lowered his eyes and stepped back completely, his arms falling uselessly at his sides. The teller pressed her lips tight, tears in her eyes, her voice breaking into a whisper. "I knew he was telling the truth." The black man's gaze cut through the silence. "You tried to erase me with fire and with insults. But fire does not erase ownership. Prejudice does not rewrite truth. And the truth is this: your power ends the moment mine is revealed." The manager's knees almost buckled. His arrogance, once so loud, had shrunk to a fragile shell, cracking in full view of the very people he had tried to control. In that instant, the balance of the room was complete. The man who had been branded an outsider now stood revealed as the ultimate authority, and the manager, once untouchable, looked like a trespasser in his own branch. The lobby erupted into chaos, but it was not the chaos of disorder, it was the chaos of truth breaking through the surface. Customers shouted in disbelief, their phones raised higher, every lens locked on the scene. The young teller covered her mouth, whispering through her trembling fingers, "He really owns the bank." The manager staggered backward, his polished shoes slipping slightly on the marble. His voice, once sharp with arrogance, now shook like glass. This cannot be. You are lying. There is no way you..." The black man stepped closer, his presence cutting through the noise. His tone was calm, but it carried a finality that silenced the room. "I am not lying. What you dismissed as a scam was authority you never imagined. What you burned was not my check. It was your career." The assistant manager dropped his gaze to the floor, his shoulders slumping with shame. "I should have stopped this sooner," he muttered. His voice grew stronger. "I saw what you did, and I will testify to it." The manager whipped around, his face twisted in betrayal. "You coward! You are siding with him?" The assistant manager met his eyes, steady now. "I am siding with the truth." The female voice from the phone returned, crisp and undeniable. "Compliance confirmation complete. Effective immediately. Authority of branch manager revoked pending executive decision. Access clearance suspended." A wave of shock rolled through the lobby. Customers gasped as the manager looked down at his badge, the small security light on it flickering from green to red. He swiped it against the side panel of the counter out of desperation, but the panel beeped with rejection. Denied. His face drained of color. "No, this cannot be happening. Not here. Not in front of them." The black man's eyes did not waver. His words cut with precision. "It is happening here, and it is happening now, because power without integrity collapses the moment it is tested." The crowd broke into a mixture of applause and shouts of agreement. A father, with his daughter on his arm, declared, "This is justice." The gray-suited client spoke into his phone's camera. "We just watched the manager of Unity Trust Bank lose his authority, live in front of everyone." The manager, trembling, turned toward the security guard. "Do something! Stop this!" But the guard only shook his head and stepped away. "I will not protect arrogance, not today." The manager's jaw clenched, but his power was gone. Every eye in the lobby had shifted, no longer seeing him as a figure of authority, but as a man stripped bare, his prejudice exposed under the unforgiving light of truth. The lobby held its breath, the weight of silence pressing down heavier than any shout. The manager's badge still blinked red against his chest, useless now, a symbol of authority stripped away. He tried to speak, but the words stumbled out as fragments. This is not fair. I did not know." The black man's gaze did not soften. His voice carried the steady force of judgment. "Ignorance is not innocence. You did not want to know. You wanted to assume, to humiliate, to erase. But your actions are logged. Your words are recorded. And now, your tenure ends here." He raised his phone once more. "Execute termination protocol. Effective immediately." "Embra," the female voice replied with surgical precision. "Confirmed. Gregory Hale, branch manager. Employment terminated. Access permanently revoked. Compliance report finalized." The moment struck like lightning. The manager's badge went completely dark, its light extinguished in front of everyone. Gasps spread through the lobby. The assistant manager stepped back, his face pale. The young teller exhaled with relief, whispering, "It is done." The security guard no longer stood as an enforcer but as a bystander, arms crossed, eyes lowered. The balance had flipped completely. The crowd erupted with voices of awe and vindication. "He fired him on the spot," someone exclaimed. Another voice rose above the rest. "This is what justice looks like." The manager's knees buckled. He gripped the counter to keep himself standing, his arrogance finally broken into raw desperation. "You cannot do this to me. I gave my life to this branch." M6. The black man's answer came sharp and final. "You gave your life to prejudice, and prejudice has no place here." The assistant manager lowered his head, speaking almost as a confession. "He is right. You have done this before. We all knew it, and we stayed silent. But today, silence is no longer possible." The black man nodded once, his tone calm but resolute. "Silence is complicity, and complicity ends now." The customers, who had once stood in uneasy confusion, now moved with certainty. Phones captured the fallen manager's final collapse. Some clapped, some shook their heads, but all of them knew they had witnessed something irreversible. The man in the hoodie stood tall, his presence commanding yet quiet. He had not raised his voice, he had not lashed out, yet justice had been served in full. The manager, who had mocked and demeaned him, now stood stripped of power, a warning carved into living memory. The lobby was no longer a bank. It had become a tribunal, and the verdict was final. The lobby of Unity Trust Bank no longer felt like a place of business. It felt like a place where history had been written. The marble floor was littered with the ashes of a check, the fragments of arrogance, and the weight of silence that came after truth was revealed. Customers stood in stunned clusters, whispering to one another, their phones still recording as though they feared to miss a single second. Gregory Hale, once the loudest voice in the room, now stood broken. His badge was dark, his authority gone, his posture hunched. Security walked him toward the glass doors, and for the first time, he looked small in the very place he once ruled with disdain. Some customers shook their heads at him. Others turned away completely, as if he no longer existed. The black man remained calm in the center of it all. He did not raise his voice. He did not gloat. But the gravity of his presence commanded the room. "This bank was founded on the promise of trust," he said, his tone low but resolute. "But trust cannot survive where prejudice is allowed to live." The young teller stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. "I will remember today. I will remember that silence is not neutral, it is complicity, and I will not be silent again." The man nodded once, acknowledging her courage. Then his eyes swept across the customers. "You witnessed what happened here. You saw a man try to erase another with arrogance, and you saw him fail. Remember this: dignity cannot be burned, and truth cannot be torn." Applause began in the corner, hesitant at first, then spreading until the entire lobby shook with clapping. Some people cheered, others recorded through tears, but every person knew they had seen something that would not be forgotten. The black man turned, sliding his phone into his pocket, and walked toward the exit with measured steps. There was no need for spectacle, No need for raised fists or raised voices. Justice had already been delivered. As the doors closed behind him, the echoes of his words remained carved into the air. Power is not proven through volume. Power is proven through truth, through patience, and through dignity that no flame can destroy. The crowd lingered in the lobby long after he left, still processing what they had witnessed. And in that silence, one truth rang clear. The bank did not belong to prejudice anymore. It belonged to him.